from three nominees. Ryan McCormick, nominee to be the Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy. Daniel Edwards, nominee to be the Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Aviation and International Affairs. And Trent Morse, nominee to serve on the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. Congratulations to each of you. All three of these nominees will contribute to making American transportation safe and efficient. Under the Biden-Buttigieg regime, the Department of Transportation diverted billions of dollars towards left-wing initiatives. For example, by requiring states and cities to address pointless DEI and environmental justice criteria when applying for infrastructure grants, or by squandering taxpayer money to the tune of $4 billion for California's dismal failure of a high-speed rail boondoggle, rather than investing that money in fixing outdated air traffic control systems and aging bridges. Today, Secretary Duffy is working hard to refocus the department on its core mission, advancing the safety, reliability, and efficiency of the U.S. transportation system.
In today's hearing, the Senate committee opens with a sobering reminder of just how high the stakes truly are. After a devastating cargo plane crash in Louisville claimed 9 lives, lawmakers confront the critical question: is America's transportation system being protected or politicized? And as new nominees step forward to shape the future of aviation, infrastructure, and national transportation policy, the real battle emerges. Will the Department of Transportation stay focused on safety, efficiency, and accountability, or fall back into ideology-driven distractions? Let's break it all down.
The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. Before we hear from our nominees, I would like to first acknowledge the tragedy that occurred last night at Louisville's International Airport after a UPS cargo plane crashed soon after takeoff, tragically resulting in the loss of at least 9 lives. I want to extend my deepest condolences to the families of the crew and others who lost their lives to this terrible accident. It is a reminder of the critical work this committee does to improve aviation safety, particularly this week with our 2 nominations hearings. Tomorrow's hearing will feature a nominee to serve as a board member of the National Transportation Safety Board. With that said, we will now proceed to the business before this committee and to hear from 3 nominees. Ryan McCormick, nominee to be the Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy. Daniel Edwards, nominee to be the Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Aviation and International Affairs. And Trent Morse, nominee to serve on the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. Congratulations to each of you. All 3 of these nominees will contribute to making American transportation safe and efficient. Under the Biden-Buttigieg regime, the Department of Transportation diverted billions of dollars towards left-wing initiatives. For example, by requiring states and cities to address pointless DEI and environmental justice criteria when applying for infrastructure grants, or by squandering taxpayer money to the tune of $4 billion for California's dismal failure of a high-speed rail boondoggle, rather than investing that money in fixing outdated air traffic control systems and aging bridges. Today, Secretary Duffy is working hard to refocus the department on its core mission, advancing the safety, reliability, and efficiency of the U.S. transportation system. We will hear from nominees prepared to support Secretary Duffy's agenda. Let's begin with Mr. McCormick, who is nominated to serve as the Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy. He worked in numerous positions on Capitol Hill, including as legislative director for then Representative Sean Duffy. I'm not sure what happened to him after his congressional career. And as the Chief of Staff for Congressman Scott Fitzgerald. Mr. McCormick also held several senior roles at the Export-Import Bank during the first Trump administration. Currently, he is Deputy Chief of Staff for Secretary Duffy at DOT. Mr. McCormick's experiences in both the legislative and executive branches give him a deep institutional knowledge needed to address the 40,000 annual highway fatalities to streamline project permitting, and to make America a world leader in advanced transportation technologies such as drones and autonomous vehicles. Next, we have Dan Edwards, who is nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Transportation at the Office for Aviation and International Affairs. That office is responsible for promoting fair competition and enforcing international agreements. He is also the Associate Administrator for Airports at the FAA. Mr. Edwards' 30-year aviation career includes stints as a military pilot, a civil engineer, and in senior executive roles for several private aviation businesses. Since 2022, Mexico has been in violation of the U.S.-Mexico Open Skies Agreement. I look forward to hearing how Mr. Edwards will stand up for U.S. carriers, hold Mexico accountable, and promote robust competition. Finally, Mr. Morse has been nominated to serve as a member on the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, known as MWA. He has served in multiple positions in the Trump administration, most recently as the Deputy Director for the Presidential Personnel Office. He also worked in the first Trump administration as a senior advisor at the Department of Transportation, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Department of Health and Human Services. Currently, Mr. Morse serves on DOT's advisory board. I'm glad to see that Mr. Morse shares my disdain and that of millions of other flyers for the glacial, tank-like people movers at Dulles. It sounds like we'll finally have a representative on the MWA board who cares about the actual experiences of passengers at Reagan and Dulles. Thank you to each of our nominees for joining us today, and I turn to Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you.
The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation convenes under the weight of tragedy, a deadly UPS cargo plane crash at Louisville's International Airport. With at least 9 lives lost, the committee opens by honoring the victims and acknowledging the urgent responsibility to improve America's aviation safety systems. This week's hearings carry even more significance, especially with a nominee for the National Transportation Safety Board scheduled for review tomorrow. But today's focus turns to 3 key nominees who will directly influence U.S. transportation policy. Ryan McCormick, nominated to serve as Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy. Daniel Edwards, nominated as Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Aviation and International Affairs. And Trent Morse, selected to join the Board of Directors of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. Each nominee enters at a pivotal moment as the department attempts to pull away from years of controversial spending priorities. For too long, billions were pushed toward ideological initiatives that force states to navigate layers of DEI, environmental justice requirements, and experimental grant criteria. Meanwhile, critical infrastructure, from air traffic control systems to aging bridges, continued to fall behind. The California high-speed rail project alone consumed nearly $4 billion in federal funds while producing little more than delays, overruns, and political frustration. The committee signals that this era must end. Now, under Secretary Duffy, the department is being steered back toward its core mission: safety, reliability, and efficiency. And these nominees are expected to reinforce that renewed direction. Ryan McCormick brings a blend of legislative and executive experience, having worked on Capitol Hill and later at the Export-Import Bank. Today, as Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Transportation, he's already been part of efforts to streamline permitting, address the nation's 40,000 annual roadway fatalities, and advance emerging technologies like drones and autonomous vehicles. His institutional knowledge positions him to shape long-term transportation strategy. Next is Daniel Edwards, whose 3-decade aviation career spans military service, civil engineering, and leadership roles within the private aviation sector. As Associate Administrator for Airports at the FAA, he has navigated complex regulatory and international issues, a crucial point as the U.S. continues grappling with Mexico's violations of the U.S.-Mexico Open Skies Agreement. The committee intends to press him on how he will enforce fair competition, stand up for American carriers, and uphold the integrity of international aviation standards. Finally, Trent Morse, with experience across multiple federal agencies, including Transportation, HUD, and Health and Human Services, is positioned to influence the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. Committee members highlight his practical focus on passenger experience, particularly frustrations shared by millions regarding outdated people mover systems at Dulles. His presence may signal a stronger commitment to modernizing regional airport operations and enhancing customer service. As each nominee prepares to testify, the broader question looms large. Can America's transportation agencies be refocused on performance over politics? The committee signals that today's nominees represent a step toward restoring balance, strengthening safety, and ensuring accountability within one of the nation's most essential systems. With that, the chair passes the discussion to Ranking Member Cantwell and the hearing begins. As the committee turns the microphone to the ranking member, the mission becomes unmistakable. Rebuild trust, restore focus, and return America's transportation system to what it should have always been: safe, modern, and accountable. If you want more breakdowns of congressional hearings, policy battles, and the moments shaping America behind the scenes, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. This is Behind the Podium, where we don't just watch history, we document it.